Well, hello and welcome to the All Saints podcast. Today is a somewhat special occasion. I have the absolute pleasure of being here with Pastor Celso Namuco from the Philippines. Pastor Celso and I met in just a few weeks ago at the CREC council meeting in Monroe, Louisiana. And he and I just got talking over a couple of cups of coffee one afternoon and evening. And I was so encouraged and intrigued by what the Lord is doing among the churches that Pastor Celso is a part of in the Philippines. And I just thought this would be a great opportunity for me to get to know him a little bit better. I wanted to give you guys a chance to hear what God is doing in the Philippines. As Pastor Celso will explain, the churches that he's a part of are contemplating joining up with the CREC, perhaps in the future. But it's just really fascinating to hear about the demographics and the religious landscape in the Philippines. It's really a very different place to where we're used to here in the US and elsewhere in the West. Alongside all that, he's just such a genuinely wonderful guy. We had a fantastic conversation for a couple of hours, and it's a pleasure to be with you again. Pastor Celso Namuco, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Steve Jeffery, for this opportunity to introduce ourselves and
great.
our ministry here in the Philippines.
Great.
I'm so glad to share our life here in your podcast.
Fantastic. Well, listen, let me kick straight off. I already know a little bit about you and about your family, but why don't you just begin by tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, and then perhaps tell us how you became a Christian. There's a bit of a story there, and it would be fantastic for us to hear it.
Yes, I have 4 children, and my wife's married for 15 years now. And my children are ages 13, 12, and 9 and 7. And the only daughter I have is my second, which is her name is Eunice. And my 3 sons' names are Joseph, James, and John. So it's just easy to remember all these biblical names. And I was able to know the Lord because, our country is predominantly Roman Catholic. And from typical Roman Catholic family, it's very hard at time to hear the true gospel of Christ. And it happened to me when I was able to hear the first gospel is when I was 11 or 12-year-old at the time. And I was selling popsicle in my village, try to raise some funds for my enrollment at that time. So I'm preparing to enter in a junior high. So that was a summer of 1988, as far as I can remember.
Right.
When I was passing by a group of children that being taught by a Sunday school teacher, and she's teaching about I'd heard this is about Lazarus and the rich man. So I just stopped and ring my bell, when you're selling popsicles. You gotta get their attention. And then suddenly I got their attention. And the teacher, without indignant, looked at me and said, "Oh, this is just a kid." So he just asked me to join the class and said that we will gonna buy all your popsicle if you sit in here and be part of the class.
So that's a nice business deal for you right there.
Yeah. So that would be the best deal I could ever have that time because, that's already around 10:30 a.m. and it's getting hot outside. So for me, it's just a way to do the business, but not to listen to the story yet. But as the class progressed, and I listened to the story. And then at the end of it, I was really touched, and I even cried because of Lazarus and what happened to him at
Yeah.
the first instance. But then I realized, oh, the Lord is truly gracious and faithful
Mm.
to him. That God brought him to heaven.
Yeah.
And I told to the Sunday school teacher, I'll be back for the next Bible story. But then the business happened, and it's all sold out. The
Right.
following day, I did not bring my ice candy box or the popsicle box. And the
Right.
teacher said, "What happened, Celso? What are we gonna have our snacks for today?" I told her I no longer wanted to be the rich man. I want to be Lazarus. So from that time on, the gospel and the Bible ignited my heart
Mm.
to know, because I never heard the gospel. It's just purely religious
Right.
because of our community and our country grew up in a Roman Catholic religion.
And you're just 11 or 12 years old at that time.
Right. And that is the first time that I've heard the gospel. And then the second time is I was able to be part of the church when I was in first year college, when there is a ministry for college students, and one of my classmates invited me to come over to this fellowship of youth in my community college where I enrolled. And I'm a freshman, and I do not know also that at that time where is the fellowship of these college students. So his name is Chris. He invited me to join that weekend fellowship. I just remember that was Saturday of 1992. And when I came over there are hundreds of students, and then they're singing. And then Chris told me, if ever the worship leader will ask, will be the first time here, you're gonna raise your hand. I said, okay, that would be easy. But then the leader said, who is first time here? No one raised their hands. So I assume I'm the first one. I'm the only one who's first time there. And it is. So I don't want to raise my hands because I don't want anybody to look at me.
Right.
I was so shy. But then, come on, he just elbowed me and said, raise your hand. And then when I raised my hand, everybody comes to me and said, there's a welcome here. So I just really wanted to hide because it's my first time to be in the fellowship of Christians, because I never grew
welcome
on that way. Yeah, they just welcomed me.
Right.
And that was the beginning of my Christian life.
Right. Wow, that's wonderful. I think I really thought I'd heard it all, but when I, becoming a Christian by selling popsicles to summer camp and then going back the next day just because you didn't want to be the rich man anymore, it's like that's a new one on me, and it's just wonderful. So you're a college age student at that time. Your faith has come alive over your teenage years against a background of Roman Catholicism, and we should hear a little bit more about that later. But tell us also about what happened between that time as a young man, where you are now. Where did you meet your wife, and how did you end up becoming a pastor as you are now?
Yeah, so to start with the Christian life, I was in a freshman of my college years. I was also elected that year, 1992, to be the leader of my village. We call it barangay here in the Philippines, the smallest unit in our government. It is belong to a town, so it's like a magistrate in the U.S. So it's a very small village, and I became a leader of that age group between 21-year-old below. So I represent this age group in my town where where my village is and where I was born and grew up. So it is a kind of training for the future politicians,
right? Okay, yeah,
of our country,
community representative, that kind of thing. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
but that is also the way of God to call me. So because I never came from a well-known family or rich family, to be able to be part of that is just a miracle, because my playmates and classmates and all those colleagues during that time just wanted me to run because there's nobody going against the son of a politician in my place. So I just said, "Hey, go on. So if you want to support me, then let's do this." Because
so you ran against the odds and you managed to get the position, right?
I was managed to get that position, but this is the biggest problem that I did not know then what will happen to me, because I'm just thrown off by my friends into a like a forest. I don't even know. This is uncharted territory. And just I realized that adults are also involved in politics. And I was really surprised of what transpired in my first 1 to 2 years of my leadership. So, but that time also, I brought them to our church, to the church where I first heard the gospel. And that gospel is, and the gospel is that when I first heard the gospel is when I was a kid.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And so I was baptized there, and I brought
your friends,
all my friends there.
Yeah.
So my village, my barangay were against it. It's just uncultural thing. It is such a very big changes that I'm doing.
And that's just to anticipate where I want to talk to you about this in a moment or two, but that the reason for that is because of the very strong Catholic presence in the Philippines, right?
Oh, right. At that time, that was early 90s and late 80s, you never heard that a popular personalities like politicians and celebrities were Christians.
Right.
Now, and now it's different from before when I was able to know the Lord. Okay.
Right. And so you're in that position where you've got a sort of leadership role as a young man in your local community. You're going to church. You're taking other people with you. How did you end up as a pastor? And I want to know also how you met your wife. So can you fill in those gaps for us?
Yeah, I will just fill my gaps. But this is it. So after 2 years being in a hot seat,
yeah,
you cannot stand heat stay out of the kitchen. So that's what I did. So I'm not part of this. And that also the time that I realized I'm got called by God to be in the ministry.
Right. Okay.
So I grew in the Lord. I attended camp, and once I brought some young people to the camp, to this youth camp, and then I realized that I need to learn more about His Word.
Right.
I want to serve Him. So I entered in the seminary, which is in Manila.
Right. Okay.
So, and then my families, all my friends said that they said I'm crazy because I was full scholar in my college, and they said I have a bright future, could be a future lawyer, could be a good politician in the future, but I give up all these privileges, and I entered in the seminary that I need to pay in that seminary.
Yeah, nobody's going to pay you to go to seminary. No full scholarships.
Yes. So at my second year of my seminary, the Lord is so good that a person was used by God. It's a family of a member in our church, in a small town, that supported my studies. So
Oh,
I
wow.
finished my bachelor degree in theology, and it's a long story before I met my wife. So
Yeah.
because I pastored this small church in that village where next to my barangay where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and there's a colleague there, a friend of mine, a common friend, so also
Yeah.
part of that denomination, formerly Baptist, and he introduced me to my wife. That's they are
Right.
part of this InterVarsity Christian Fellowship,
Gotcha.
IBCF.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great.
So I was able to meet my wife through this ministry.
Right. Okay. Fantastic.
And yes.
So
And we became
she knew
friends.
she was getting to know a pastor then. She knew she was getting to know a pastor.
Right. And she was also a leader of these college students
Right.
in
Okay.
in her university.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we
Well,
getting to know each
that
other.
will strike a chord with lots of people here. There are one or two people here at the church in All Saints who have been involved in various university ministries, serving in that way, and so that's great to hear that brought you and your wife together. Remind me of your wife's name. Forgive me, I've forgotten.
Yeah, my wife's name is Lorena, but her nickname
Whatever.
is Honey, Hanny.
Honey.
And the reason why I wanted to share this, that's always in the setup of college ministries and high school ministries. It's just this is our population is very young. 60% are young people.
Right.
And our churches are, in our church, 70% are young people.
Right.
So,
now, this goes on to something I wanted you to talk about, because many people in the West have no idea of what the Philippines is like, how big it is, how many people are there, what the religious landscape is like, what people believe. Can you give us a sketch of the size, the population size of the country of the Philippines? We know it's islands and so on, but how many islands is it? That kind of thing. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, the population of our country is around 110 million.
110 million.
Well, yes, and our population here is 100 million in the entire Philippines. Where is the 10 million? The 10 million is outside the Philippines, because normally that's our main course, or our expert is labor. So we jokingly said that we already give the tithe to the world.
Right. So that's people who've moved away for work and other things and are working elsewhere. Right. Understood.
Yes.
And what kind of area are those people spread out in? How big in terms of land area is the Philippines?
Yeah, the land area is, if you compact it, because we are archipelagos, islands.
Yeah.
We got 7,107 islands, but it depends if it's high tide or low tide.
Okay, so low tide or what kind of, give us a sense of how big it is.
It's the size of Arizona, the state of Arizona. If you compact the geography, yeah, it's just
so you have a population, what, 1/3 the size of the United States, packed into the state of Arizona.
Can you imagine that? How highly dense it is, right?
Because this is a thing that is really interesting for us to start thinking about now, because to tell us about the religious landscape as well before we get into this, because are people, you mentioned Roman Catholics, what sort of proportion of the population would call themselves Roman Catholics?
Yeah, the Roman Catholics comprise of 80%.
Wow.
Of the population up to today. Okay. And they said that the population of Christians here around 10%. and the rest 10% is different cult group, Muslims, and other
Okay.
Christian
Okay.
religion.
Yes.
Yeah, so and in my province where I belong, which is Batangas, where I live, is the biggest Catholic church in all of Asia. Is located here.
Wow.
Yeah, in my province. Yes.
So, and this is interesting to hear you talk about, because this rings. It reminds me of a situation in some parts of Eastern Europe. So you're saying 80% Roman Catholic, 10% Christian, and then 10% Muslims, and so on. And of course, what that reflects is that tragically, the Roman Catholic Church in the Philippines has really drifted so far from the gospel that in practical terms, it's not a place where the gospel is heard. It really has just become a kind of tradition for people that's divorced from any living faith in Christ.
Right. And in that 80 million, I've heard that it's only about 12 million are really faithful in their religion, Catholic religion, and the rest are nominal Roman Catholics.
Yeah.
That,
it's a real tragedy.
It's a tragedy.
Which is interesting. It's this kind of thing is replicated in parts of Western Europe, France and Spain and Italy, where there are large numbers of people who still think of themselves as Roman Catholics, but they may be baptized, and so in that sense they're members of the church, but they've never heard of Christ really. They rarely, if ever, worship. When they do, the teaching is thin or non-existent. In Eastern Europe, I've spent some time in Serbia, and you have a similar thing with the Serbian Orthodox Church, and it's a real tragedy to think of that. But I mean, it does present some opportunities, doesn't it? Because I mean, you came from a Roman Catholic background. Can you tell us? I mean, well, no. First, before we get to that, to tell us about the group of churches that you're associated with. How many? What is your theological tradition and the tradition of those churches? How many are they? How big are they, and so on?
Yeah, and I'm normally the theological backgrounds of the churches here are different. In the 5 core of our fellowship, which is preached, we call it Philippine Reformed Evangelical Association of Churches, that joined CREC the last year and put up a conference so that we could join with the CREC last year. And then Pastor Hughes and Pastor Virgil, even Pastor Ben Sedek Smith came over here to see us. Yeah. So they are one of the cores, is part of the before Pentecostals, and 3 of them are part of the CRC, Christian Reform, and I came from a Baptist tradition.
Right.
And in my province, normally it's all you only choose between the 2, the tradition of the Baptist or the Pentecostals, and the Reform is becoming now flourishing. It's there is a emerging interest.
Yes.
The Reform faith and Reform theology.
So that's just wonderful, because we are seeing the situation is different here in the US and in my home country of England and elsewhere in Europe. But nonetheless, there is this sort of gradual, or sometimes quite dramatic, resurgence of enthusiasm for a deeper, more biblical, reformed vision for the Christian faith. And so people coming from a range of different traditions, Anglican and Catholic traditions, and also from Baptist traditions, and are seeing the blessings that we've inherited from our Reformed forefathers in the faith. And Reformed churches are growing here in the US, somewhat more slowly in the UK. It sounds like they're growing quite rapidly in the Philippines. Can you give us a sense of the kind of growth that you have seen?
Yeah, in just in our church, we grew from one family only that was 17 years ago
Right.
to more than 30 plus families. So an
Wow.
average family here is around 6-7 members. So we got 200 members in our
Wow.
church,
That's
and
fabulous.
that is I would just say 80% of them is from Catholic belief, and it's
Right.
not from
Okay.
other churches.
Right.
We are not just reshuffling the card membership.
Right. Yes. That's encouraging because one of the things that we've been aware of here is there is a danger of that. We're just shuffling the deck so that Reformed Baptist friends are becoming Reformed Paedo Baptist members, and we're delighted. We want to welcome people who come from that tradition, but it's so much a bigger deal, really, if people are coming for the first time to a living faith in Christ from whatever tradition that they've come from. So your church is a couple of hundred people, but that's not the only church in the Philippine Reformed Evangelical Association of Churches. Give us a sense of how big that denomination is.
It's not really big now because we just started around last 17, and from 5 churches, we are now 18 churches. And this is a very conservative numbers only.
Right.
And we don't encourage a lot of churches to come and join just to be part of, because if they don't understand really the Reformed faith, and that will defeat the purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Pastor Leo and I, we just invite more and more, like from the Pentecostal beliefs and other traditions. Like,
yes.
There'll be more.
Yeah, because that's really interesting as well, Celso, because here in the CREC in the United States, we've been growing steadily with increasing number of new congregations. And at the same time, we don't want to go that easy populist route of just, so to speak, diluting our doctrinal and cultural distinctives. We want to retain the heritage of the gospel and its implications that we feel we've been blessed by and have received, and that's a precious deposit, as Scripture calls it. And we don't want to just dilute it just for the sake of growing the numbers. But you talk about your growth from just less than half a dozen churches to now being 17 or 18 churches in just a few years. That seems pretty impressive. The Lord is doing some marvelous things there. And just thinking about the religious landscape, when you have this background of large numbers of Roman Catholic people who have had exposure to some kind of church traditions, alongside an enthusiasm for Reformed biblical theology and Christian living, it just strikes me that we could be witnessing the start of something. Well, it's clearly the start of something wonderful, but it could be the start of something wonderful and extremely big. I mean, we're only 100 churches or so here in the US. If you guys join with us and keep growing at the rate you're growing, we're going to find that we're a denomination that is spread mainly over 2 countries, the Philippines and the United States, roughly 50-50 before much longer. If that growth continues, it's just wonderful to think that what we could be a part of something where the Lord is doing such an astonishing work across the world, not just here.
Yeah, it will be exponential, and I would just say that we're just making it not really as fast as we want to be. That 18 churches is really, we wanted to be part of the process.
Yes,
we ordain ministers, we ordain elders, and they were able to join our twice in a row a year meeting. Like that is our major conferences. The first quarter of the year and the last quarter of the year.
Yes.
is our major events
Yes,
on
that's
these
great.
18 churches. And
Well, it's really it's likely to be encouraging as well, particularly for some of our Series C churches that are somewhat closer to you. I mean, we are 14 hours time difference apart here. I mean, I'm recording this on Tuesday evening. It's already halfway through Wednesday morning for you in the Philippines. But we, of course, have churches in Russia and Ukraine. We have churches in Japan. We have churches in Eastern Europe. It's just it may well be a wonderful encouragement to those guys as well to feel that someone a little bit closer to them, not that much, still some distance away, but somewhat closer geographically. They've got friends in the same association of churches, the same denomination, in the fullness of time, as and when you're able to join with us.
All right. Yes. At this time it's 8:10 a.m. Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning, yeah, it's 6:10 p.m. on Tuesday here.
Yeah.
Well, listen, let me just throw you a couple more questions. So we talked a bit about the shape of the religious landscape, so to speak, in the Philippines, and the broad demographic picture. It's just tremendously exciting to hear that God is bringing to Christ and bringing to such a rich fullness of faith and joy in Christ. Not just you and your family and your church, but over a dozen other churches that all share the same kind of vision for Christian faith that we have inherited here in the US. We've heard about your family background and your wife and your kids. What would be really great, just to close us off with, is can you tell us a little bit about the particular challenges or opportunities that you're facing at the moment as a church, and how we can pray for you about those things?
Yeah, the challenge here in our church, because we are still in a third world country, and I would say that the predominantly Catholic beliefs, our politicians, mostly the businessmen, were really in one terms when it comes to using their funds. So that's also our disadvantage here if we belong in a minority group. So normally, like today, it's election, and the politician which entice those who are part of the big part of the population, like the Roman Catholics, and they are the majority. So so the funds is different from the USA when it comes to doing ministry, and it's our disadvantage too. That's why our churches, even we are just doing what we can do. We use all alternatives so that we can gather. Like, for example, when I started the church, we started under the bridge, under the bridge. And then one missionary who supported us monthly, $100 a month, so that we can sustain. He said that how much money I used when I was a church planter, that was 2004, so that we can hold a service under the bridge. I said, it is. He said, is it cheap? I said, no, it is free. Because it's under the bridge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, so that's how the disadvantages of our churches, especially among rural areas in the countryside. I'm now in the city. So compared to 17 years ago and up to now, there are a big difference now, because we got hundreds of members, but still the average income of the family is around $4 or $5 a day.
Right.
So
$4 or $5 a day
that
for a family.
So it is a really big difference.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's part of that's our members. That's the part of our church.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, this is it really is sobering, to hear that. Here in the US, sometimes we get caught up in conversations about the culture that we're in relation to the political situation or financial pressures and so on. And there are genuine concerns here. But then, as so often, it's a shock to us to realize that we really do have first world problems. We don't have entire congregations, many of which are subsisting on $4 or $5 a day. So maybe, I pray that we are able to help and support you guys, genuinely able to help and support you. I have a feeling that over the years, you may be able to support us in ways that are not so much financial, but have more to do with broadening our awareness of what the Lord is doing across the world. And those kinds of differences also, I think may be quite sobering to many of us. And that picture of, we already have churches in places that are poorer than the US. I don't think we have many churches in places where there's quite that level of poverty. So that is sobering, and I'm grateful to you for mentioning that. Thank you.
Yes, but we were able to grow even on those difficulties.
Yeah.
But without the partnership of our three brothers from other countries, for example, the USA, it's always been a part of the growth of the evangelicals here in the Philippines. The churches, it's always been a part.
Right.
Even our churches that are growing here, even the denominations that are here, are
that's great.
Brought up because of our mother churches, which is from the USA.
That's great. Well, listen, I'm going to close with an advert on your behalf, a public service announcement, maybe we'll call it. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but if there's anybody here in the US, in any church or any individual, whether you're associated with the CREC or not, if you've heard this podcast or watched this video, if you would like to get in touch with Pastor Celso, then you can do so through me or through us here at All Saints. This video, you've probably come across it on YouTube or on our church website, but if you've not found it on the website, then we are at allsaintskirk.com, www.allsaintskirk.com. And so if you have no other way of getting in touch with Pastor Celso, you can do so just by dropping us an email. You'll find the details on the website. If you want to just find out more information, I think we might get in touch with them again in a few months' time and do another video. If you're interested in finding out how you could support them financially, you could get in touch with us and we can pass on their information to you. Or you could get in touch with the CREC presiding minister. Go to the CREC website, crechurches.com, be able to get in touch with him there. I hope, Pastor Celso, this will be the first of many, many interactions between you and not just us, but many other churches here in the CREC. And I hope that that we're able to bless you in something like as much as you've already been a blessing to us, just in sharing those accounts of what the Lord is doing among you. Thank you very much for taking the time at the beginning of what's probably a long day for you to share what the Lord has been doing. Thank you.
Yeah, we also thank you for your support, even with Pastor Leo and I and Ate Alma when we were there.
Yeah,
privileged to know you and CREC, and to be part of the council is a big blessing for all of us here in the Philippines.
All right. Well, the Lord bless you, my friend. I want to keep in touch with you. I look forward to seeing you again next time we're able to bring you over to the US. But for now, thank you. The Lord bless you. And take care. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you. God bless.